Hey guys, History Help here, and today we're going to be doing our first video. We're going to be covering the Cold War, the origins of the Cold War, part 1. It's going to be the start of the Cold War series. We'll probably be starting about 2 more series pretty soon, but I'm not going to let you know what those are just yet. You can see when they come out. But yeah, here we go. Okay, so the Cold War was basically a rivalry between the Soviet Union and the United States during the second half of the 20th century. You can trace the origins of the Cold War back to the final days of World War II. It was decided that Germany would be divided between France, Great Britain, the United States, and the Soviets for post-war management. In 1946, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill spoke on how an Iron Curtain had descended on Eastern Europe, with the Soviets controlling everything behind it on their side. The Iron Curtain became a kind of a trademark coined term to describe the division of Europe for the second half of the 20th century. Berlin was also divided, with the Soviets controlling the East and the Allies controlling the West. The Soviets were also busy setting up communist governments in Eastern European nations that had occupied on its push to Berlin. Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, wanted to control all of Berlin, and therefore he restricted access to West Berlin. The lack of supplies resulted in an incident known as the 1948 Berlin Airlift. The airlift consisted of planes flying around the clock delivering supplies to West Berliners. The Soviets eventually dropped the blockade in 1949, and Germany was divided into two halves: in the west, the Federal Republic of Germany, and in the east, the German Democratic Republic. In response to the growing tensions, the United States, under President Harry Truman, was currently adopting a policy known as containment. Containment was a foreign policy directed at preventing the spread of communism. This policy led to two significant acts. First came the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan was an economic aid package offered to Western European nations named after Secretary of State George Marshall. The plan was implemented in 1948 and lasted for 4 years. The intent of the plan was to make European nations prosperous again by rebuilding their economies devastated by war. It would be far less likely for them to fall to communism if they had strong capitalist economies of their own. The second major entity to come out of containment is NATO. NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is a military alliance between the United States, Canada, Iceland, and other Western European powers formed in 1949. Its intent was to provide collective security to its member states, especially after the Berlin blockade demonstrated that the Soviets weren't to be fully trusted. The formation of NATO led the Soviet Union to create its own military alliance, albeit later, in 1955, called the Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact between the USSR and its puppet nations in Eastern Europe. Its creation stemmed from the Soviets wanting to maintain control of the military and national affairs of Eastern Europe and to maintain competition with the West. So that really set the scene for the beginning of the Cold War. From about 1945, right when Germany surrendered, to 1955 when the Warsaw Pact was created. Next time, in the next video, we'll examine Soviet nuclear testing, the conflict in Korea, and the switch from Stalin to a new Soviet government, and how they all played a part in adding and taking away from the standoff. If you liked the video and would like to see more in the series, please like, comment, and subscribe.